Hi class, in this video we're going to start setting up failover clusters. So before we can get to the failover clusters, we need to configure our iSCSI machine, get that all set up, and we need to configure the IP addresses for all the machines even before that. I also want to point out that I've updated our network map to include the IP addresses that we are using inside of ACE. So make sure you look at this map and not the original map. So first thing I'm going to do is connect to the iSCSI server, set the IP address up, and join it to the domain. The IP address will be 10.0.0.6. I already have all my machines booted up, so I'm just going to go into the iSCSI console, sign in, loosen up my firewall, and change my IP. For ACE-IT, we use a 24-bit subnet mask. Our gateway that's controlled by the school is 10.0.0.1, and my DNS server is going to be my DC, which is .2. I'm just going to call it iSCSI and join it to the domain. Guys, make sure that your domain controller is up and running. If your domain controller is not running, you're not going to be able to join computers to the domain. If you leave the lab for a little bit and come back, it's going to be hibernated, so you're going to have to get it running again. So while that's rebooting, I'm going to configure FOC1, failover cluster 1. That's going to have an IP address of 10.0.0.0.7. Again, I've already booted up my iSCSI, FOC1, and FOC2. What do you think of that noise? Is it a cat throwing up?
No, Marshall's tapping the window, like the window panels against the wall.
Sorry, my cat is making a noise. Click yes. While that's waiting to come up, I'm going to sign in to FOC2 just to save some time. Okay, I'm going to loosen up my firewall and go back to FOC1. I'm going to go to local server. Change the IP address. And again, it's going to be 7, FOC2 will be 8. I'm going to call this FOC1 and join it to the domain. Now I'm going to go to FOC2. This lab I'm going to break up into several videos, but it's going to be the last lab that we're going to do for the class. When I change the IP settings, it sees it as a new network, then asks what I want my firewall to be set to. So that's why you keep seeing that message. Just like you walked into a new network inside of a Starbucks or something like that. It wants to know what you want to set the firewall to. If it's a trusted network, click yes. If it's not a trusted network, click no. If you click no, your firewall will be closed down and nothing will be able to get into your machine. If you click yes, you'll be able to discover computers and devices on your network. So now I'm going to sign into the domain on all 3 machines. This is an important step, so make sure you don't skip it. So I'm going to go to Other User, Contoso, Intoso /administrator, our standard password. Make sure you use the backslash and not the forward slash. While that's signing in, I'm going to do it to FOC1. I'm going to go to other user. I'm using my wife's laptop and it has this weird funky keyboard layout, so I can't type on it. I'm sure sitting on a sofa, not upright like I should be, doesn't help. So while that's signing in, I'm going to jump over to FOC2 and do the same thing. Click other user. And while that's signing in, I'm going to go back to iSCSI. Now this iSCSI server is going to pass out hard disk to our network that other machines can use. And we're going to use those hard disks on failover cluster 1 and failover cluster 2. I just want to give you a little bit of background about SCSI. SCSI stands for Small Computer System Interface. And basically, if you needed more than 2 drives on your machine, or you had a corporate environment, you use SCSI drives as opposed to the ATA drives back in the day. And the difference between an ATA drive and a SCSI drive was, in an ATA drive, the controller was smart and the hard disk was dumb, meaning that the circuitry to control the hard disk was really on the controller, not the hard disk itself. With SCSI, it was reversed. The controller was just an interface to connect the hard disk to the motherboard, but it didn't really have any intelligence to it. All the intelligence were stored on the hard disk. So the hard disks were smart. The controller was dumb. So basically, your computer would then issue a command to the hard disk, and the hard disk would do that task, like write a bit or read a bit from the hard disk. Now they've extended SCSI specifications to allow you to issue commands to a hard disk remotely from another computer. That's what the I stands for. So basically, this is going to allow us to create some virtual hard disk on this machine, SCSI hard disk, and then be able to issue commands remotely from our failover cluster to the hard disk stored on this machine. The weird thing is, once we get it all set up, we won't be able to access the machines locally here. We'll only be able to access them on FOC1 and FOC2. On those 2 machines, it's going to look like their local hard disk. iSCSI, once we've created them, you won't see them all on this machine, just on FOC1 and FOC2. So iSCSI, just a quick overview, is going to create some hard disk and share them on the network to FOC1 and FOC2 to use. FOC1 and FOC2 will share those hard disks, have control of them. The only thing the iSCSI will be able to do is host them, but not really do anything with the hard disk. So what I'm going to do is go into Manage, Add Roles and Features, and I got to remember where this is. I'm going to go all the way down to Server Roles, and I don't know if it's here. No, it's Feature. No, maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to go back to server rules. It's under file and storage services. File and iSCSI services. And I Scuzzy Target server. That's what we're setting up. And add the tools to manage it. Sorry guys, I couldn't remember where it was at. So basically, we're going to create some hard disk, and then we're going to create a target. That target will be the machines that are allowed to use those hard disks. So we're going to serve up that target, and then the FOC1 and FOC2 will be iSCSI clients, and they'll be able to grab those hard disks, mount them locally, and use them as if they were on this machine. So on my iSCSI Target server, I might have a box of hard disks hooked up to it, and then I'll create some virtual hard disks from those physical hard disks, and then I'll share them on the network. So I'm going to click Next, Next, Restart if needed. Okay, I'm going to pause this while it's installing. Okay, it's done installing, so I'm going to click Close. Now, it's one of these new services, so it's not going to have any utility over here. So we're going to have to go to File and Storage Services, go to iSCSI, and now we're ready to use iSCSI. Give me 1 second, I want to see how many disks I put in here. So I only have 1 disk in this machine. So I'm going to go to Console, going back to the iSCSI. So I'm going to keep my disk relatively small because I won't have a lot of space. Give me 1 second. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a virtual hard disk that we're going to share on FOC1 and FOC2. This virtual hard disk is going to be called a witness disk. I'll show you where we're going to use that later, but I'm not concerned with that right now. I'm just going to show you how to create the disk. So if you already have a disk here, you won't see this message. You'll have to go to here and click New iSCSI Virtual Disk, or click the link. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is, what server are we going to create it on? Right now we only have 1 server attached to this management console, and we're going to create it on the C drive. And I'm going to call this disk witness with the proper spelling. I'm going to click Next, and I'm only going to make this 1 gig in size. If it was going to be a large disk and a lot of read writes to that disk, then you want to choose a fixed disk. Like if there's going to be a database application or something like that. Because if you choose a dynamically expanding, and at that point, every time it needs to increase, it's going to be a performance loss. But for this witness disk, I'm going to be fine with a dynamically expanding. I'm going to create a new iSCSI target. These are going to be the machines that are allowed to access that disk. I'm going to call it I'm trying to think of a name. Target 01. And the 2 machines that are going to be part of that target are foc1.contoso.com. Then click OK. Now I'm going to add a second server. FOC2.contoso.com. So either machine, FOC1 or FOC2, will be able to use this hard disk. And because they're clustered, one will grab it, use it. When it's done with it, it'll release it, and another machine can grab it. Or if one machine goes down, the other one will automatically grab the hard disk. So we're allowing two machines to access that hard disk. This is going to be my target, and this up here is my disk that I'm sharing. So I can use this target for multiple disks. Once I have the target created, I can keep reusing it. If I want to create a new disk that these two machines can use, I'll just use this existing target. Once I have it set, in real life, I would want some sort of authentication setup, meaning I don't want to let anyone on my network grab the disk. I want to make sure they sign in first, or any machine to grab it. For this lab, I'm not going to set that up. And this is just a simple protocol. It's kind of old for authentication. And then create. Now click close. So now I've created a hard disk and a target. And if I assign that hard disk to that target, meaning either of those two machines that are part of that target can access that hard disk. Right now, no one's accessing it. So I'm going to go to FOC1. I'm joined to the domain. I'm all set up. I'm going to sign in. Again, I'm signed in as a domain admin. So now I'm going to set up the target initiator on FOC1. First, I'm going to show you my disk management. So the only disk I have in this machine right now is the disk for my operating system. So I'm going to go to Tools, I Scuzzy Initiator. The first time I launch it, it wants to know, do you want to run this every single time you start up the machine? And I'm going to say yes. So every time I start up the machine, I want it to go to the network, find this hard disk and mount it locally. So I'm going to type in target 01, excuse me, I don't want to do that. I'm going to type in the server that's the target. In this case, it's iSCSI Contoso.com. So I'm going to do a quick connect. It found the target, so I'm going to click Done. Then I'm going to go to the Volumes and Device tabs and Auto Configure. So it'll auto mount the hard disk that's associated with that target. Right now, there's only one hard disk, which is the witness disk. I'm going to click OK. Now if I go to Disk Management, I see I have two disks. My disk with my operating system and that 1 gigabit disk it mounted from the network. So every time I reboot this machine, either this machine or FOC1 will grab the disk once I'm done with the setup. I haven't configured FOC2 yet. So it's like a brand new disk. So I'm going to bring it online. I'm going to initiate it as a GPT partition or master boot record. Actually, I'm just going to do GPT. Now it's online and ready to use. So I'm going to right click and format it. I'm going to give it a label of witness. Then finish. Okay, so I grabbed the hard disk off the network, mounted it to this machine, brought it online, initialized it, and then formatted it. So now I'm going to go to FOC2. I'm going to sign in. I'm going to go to iSCSI Initiator. Make sure it comes on every time this machine boots up. I'm going to type in my target server, which is iSCSI.contoso.com, and say quick connect. So login succeeded. And I'm going to go to volumes and devices and auto configure. Click OK. Now, I did that on FOC1, and before I even configured FOC2, I initialized the hard disk, brought it online, did the formatting, because you have no control over which machine it mounts to. It could mount to FOC2, it can mount to FOC1. Instead of playing a chase game of trying to find out where the disk is, I did everything on FOC1 before I even initialized FOC2. Those disks can only be mounted on one machine at a time. If I bring FOC1 down, if I shut it down, FOC2 will automatically grab that disk. So if I go into disk management, I'll see the disk, but it'll be offline. That's because it's already online on FOC1. Don't try to force it online here. It should only be mounted to one machine at a time. I'm not going to really go into why, but if you ever open up a Word document over a network share and you try to write to it when someone already had it open, you're going to get an error saying it's in use. Well, I formatted it with an NTFS file system. That's not a global file system, meaning it's designed to only be used on one machine at a time. If you had some sort of global file system, then you can mount a hard disk on two different machines, and both machines can write to it at the same time. NTFS, only one machine can write to it. So basically, it's mounted to FOC1 right now, and FOC2 is just standing by waiting. When FOC1 releases the disk, then FOC2 will grab it automatically. If I go to this PC on FOC1, I can see that that disk is mounted there. Okay, so guys, our next lab will be to start configuring our failover clusters. So at this point, I'm going to stop this video and upload it to YouTube before moving on to the next step. Thank you.